Okay, think about this for a second. What if, what if the most powerful people, the very foundations of our democracy, weren't compromised by some big, overt invasion?
But by something quieter, something working behind the scenes for, like, decades.
Exactly, decades of patient, almost unseen manipulation. Just imagine the implications of that.
Yeah, and a genuinely chilling thought. For politics, sure, but also just for how we understand power itself.
It really is, and it's precisely that kind of unsettling question at the heart of the book we're diving into today.
Hmm.
We are embarking on a critical look at Craig Unger's American Kompromat, How the KGB Cultivated Donald Trump. Now, Unger, he's an investigative journalist, right? Known for these really deep exposés.
Yeah, national security, political corruption. That's his beat. And the thesis he puts forward here is, well, it's startling, to say the least.
Absolutely. And to help us really unpack it all, you are experiencing a unique two-host AI conversation powered by Google's NotebookLM.
Right, this allows us to work through a huge amount of information, look for connections, and hopefully bring you a deeper, more dynamic critique of the book.
Our mission today, just to be clear, isn't about spoiling the plot points or the specific reveals.
No, definitely not.
Instead, we want to scrutinize the book's core claims, look at the kind of evidence Unger presents, and think critically about the strengths, but also the limitations of his narrative.
The goal is to help you understand not just what Unger is arguing, but how he builds that argument and what that might mean for how we all perceive power and influence today.
Okay, before we go further, maybe we should quickly define that key term, kompromat.
Good idea. Yeah, for anyone unfamiliar, kompromat, it's a Russian term. It basically means compromising material. Often scandalous stuff, maybe financial, maybe personal.
Stuff that can be used to discredit or blackmail people, right? Especially public figures.
Exactly. It's a tactic with a long history in the world of intelligence.
Okay, got it. So with that context, let's start unpacking Unger's work. Craig Unger, as we said, established investigative journalist.
Right, and that reputation matters. He comes to this with a background suggesting detailed research, especially on these complex, sensitive topics like national security, sets a certain expectation.
And the central claim, it's really the core of the whole book. Unger alleges that Russian intelligence, the KGB, and, its successors systematically cultivated Donald Trump, not just recently, but for decades, as an asset.
Decades. And he argues this cultivation eventually led to this unprecedented intelligence bonanza, something that he believes fundamentally compromised American democracy, the institutions meant to protect it.
It's a huge claim, massive implications if it holds water.
Definitely.
And the genre here is important too, I think. This isn't some dry academic paper, it's investigative journalism, it's a nonfiction expose.
Right, it's focused on political corruption, intelligence ops, that messy intersection of, well, sex, power, money, treachery, all at the highest levels. Unger is definitely crafting a narrative here. He's aiming to uncover hidden truths.
And the time frame he uses is pretty broad. He situates the story mainly from the late Cold War onwards, right up to the present.
Yeah, he traces how Soviet and then Russian intelligence allegedly exploited loopholes in American systems. Things like real estate, maybe campaign finance, social media, even the legal system, using these to gain leverage over influential Americans.
And in Unger's telling, this decades-long strategy sort of culminates with the Trump presidency and its aftermath.
It's presented as a long game, very patient.
But then there's another layer which makes it even more complex. He weaves in the Jeffrey Epstein story.
Right, the sex trafficking operation. Unger suggests it might have functioned as both a source and a marketplace for sexual kompromat. He even hints at possible links to Russian intelligence there.
Which adds this whole other dimension. It raises some, frankly, uncomfortable questions about how influence can work through these darker channels.
It certainly does. So, okay, with that backdrop, let's try and map out some of Unger's main assertions. What are the big claims he's making?
Claim number one seems to be that the KGB targeted Trump very early on, like way back.
Yeah, he cites a specific source for this, a former KGB major, Yuri Shvets. Shvets claims Trump's business dealings, specifically with a Manhattan electronics store co-owned by a Soviet emigre, that this actually triggered KGB protocols. The idea was to cultivate him as an asset over 40 years ago.
Wow, 40 years. That's quite something. An alleged decades-long plan. This spotting, as Unger calls it, supposedly led to this long relationship of mutual benefit.
That's the argument. Stretching from Trump's early real estate deals right up to his political career, if true, it suggests an incredibly patient intelligence strategy.
Okay, what's claim number two?
That focuses squarely on kompromat as leverage. Unger argues the KGB and later agencies collected compromising material on Trump and other powerful Americans too, using their vulnerabilities, especially sexual, financial ones, to gain influence.
And this is where the Epstein-Maxwell network comes back in.
Exactly. He suggests that network could have served as a source, maybe a conduit, for this compromat, with possible, though maybe not explicitly proven, intelligence connections.
It really makes you think about how personal weaknesses can be, well, weaponized on that kind of stage. What's the third claim?
That broadens out to institutional corruption. Unger argues Russian operatives managed to subvert U.S. institutions. He even points fingers towards the Department of Justice, the Attorney General's office.
Serious allegations.
Very. He also explores the alleged infiltration of what he calls the Catholic right groups, like Opus Dei, for example, into the Trump administration, suggesting this contributed to authoritarian tendencies.
Okay, and claim 4 gets back to Epstein.
Yeah, Epstein's operation is a major threat. Unger portrays that network as a potential pipeline, a way for Russian intelligence to gather kompromat on American elites, with Ghislaine Maxwell supposedly facilitating access to high society tech figures.
It's a chilling picture, isn't it, how such networks might be exploited for intelligence aims.
Absolutely. And finally, Claim 5. Unger stresses this isn't just history. He argues the threat is ongoing, the damage isn't done. These kompromat operations are still active, still influential.
So it's presented less as a retrospective and more as a current danger warning.
Precisely.
Okay. Those are some huge claims. So the obvious next question is, how does he back this all up? Let's talk about the strengths and maybe the limitations of the book's evidence.
Right. So on the strength side, Unger emphasizes what he calls his insider access. He says he draws on exclusive interviews, people identified as former KGB, CIA, FBI officers, lawyers, even Epstein associates.
That kind of access, if genuine, certainly provides a unique perspective, a glimpse inside that world.
Beyond the interviews, he also points to apparently thousands of pages of investigative records, news sources in multiple languages. He suggests this gives the whole thing a layer of, documentary rigor.
Yeah.
Makes it feel thoroughly researched.
There have to be limitations, right, with claims this big.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah.
And Unger himself acknowledges some of this. A major one is that a lot of the evidence is circumstantial, or it's based on unnamed sources.
The unnamed sources issue.
Yeah, that direct, irrefutable proof.
Yeah.
The smoking gun document, the on-the-record confession, it's largely absent. And that leaves room for interpretation, for skepticism.
That's a really crucial point for anyone reading it critically.
And some specific claims, especially around Epstein's direct links to Russian intelligence, they do feel more speculative. It's not to say they're wrong, necessarily.
But the definitive proof isn't quite there.
Exactly. The reader has to connect quite a few dots themselves.
It really makes you pause and think, doesn't it? What standard of evidence should we demand for allegations that are this significant, this high stakes? If we try to look at how Unger builds his case through what some call an epistemic lens, basically asking how does he claim to know these things, some parts seem like informed conjecture.
Like what, for example?
Well, his interpretation of Trump's psychology, describing it as low intellect coupled with hyperinflated vanity. That feels like opinion, albeit potentially informed opinion. And maybe some of the specific links drawn between Epstein and Russian intelligence fall into that category too. Informed conjecture, not necessarily proven fact.
Right. So that's opinion. What about things we might class as knowledge? Things that are more verifiable?
Well, the fact that Kompromat is a known Russian intelligence tactic, that's pretty well documented historically. That seems like knowledge.
Okay.
And also, reports about Trump's financial ties to Russian oligarchs, those have surfaced in multiple news outlets over the years. That's closer to shared knowledge, even if the interpretation varies.
But the core claim, the specific causality, the depth of Trump's alleged recruitment as an asset that remains highly contested territory, right? Not quite solid knowledge for everyone.
Exactly. There are definitely different layers of certainty involved, but where Unger perhaps makes his mark is in terms of understanding.
How so?
He takes this huge array of incidents, people, institutional failures, and synthesizes them. He weaves it all into a coherent narrative about systemic vulnerability, about how foreign manipulation might exploit weaknesses. He paints a big, interconnected picture.
Making sense of seemingly scattered events.
Yeah, trying to provide a framework for understanding them collectively.
And the wisdom then. What's the takeaway value, regardless of whether you buy every single claim?
I think the book's value, its potential wisdom lies in the warning it issues, a potent warning about how fragile democratic institutions can be, especially when faced with sophisticated adversaries willing to exploit, well, human weakness.
So it's a call for vigilance, for institutional reform.
Absolutely. And that seems like a critical takeaway, however you judge the specifics of the case he builds.
Okay, let's dig a bit deeper into the logic of his argument. How does he actually construct it? You said it's cumulative, inferential.
Yeah, he builds it piece by piece, like a mosaic. He takes disparate bits of information and arranges them to suggest a pattern. It can be compelling, visually, but that approach is also inherently vulnerable. People can argue about whether the connections are real or just coincidence. Is it correlation or causation?
Right. That risk of seeing connections after the fact, post-hoc reasoning, without clear evidence of intent or coordination at the time.
Exactly. Especially when linking, say, business dealings from decades ago to a deliberate long-term recruitment plan by Russian intelligence. There's a risk of the correlation doesn't equal causation fallacy.
It's a fine line to walk in investigative work like this.
It is. Now, let's think about the implications if Unger's thesis were widely accepted as true. The long-term consequences would be staggering.
You'd be looking at calls for massive reforms, surely. Campaign finance, intelligence oversight, how we hold public officials accountable.
Absolutely. And societally, it would underscore just how vulnerable democracies might be to sophisticated information warfare, the moral hazards of, unchecked wealth and power.
It even touches on something deeper, maybe spiritual. Questions about the ethical foundations of leadership, the responsibilities we all have as citizens in a republic.
Definitely forces a confrontation with those bigger questions.
Now, after hearing about this really intricate web of claims, evidence, and potential implications, you listening might be wondering how you can better assess complex information like this yourself.
That's a great point. And it's exactly why we encourage you to explore Mindful Moments. That's our YouTube channel. It offers AI book analysis, summaries, critiques, all designed to inspire reflection and, importantly, rational thought.
Yeah, it's all about building those critical thinking muscles.
Exactly. Okay, let's pivot slightly and look at this through the lens of the U.S. Constitution's preamble. If Unger's argument holds true, how does it stack up against those stated civic aims?
It looks pretty bleak from that perspective, doesn't it? A more perfect union seems undermined if the nation's portrayed as polarized, weakened by foreign subversion.
And establish justice. If there's truth to the allegations of corruption reaching high levels, that directly challenges the idea of equitable application of the law.
Domestic tranquility could be threatened too, right? These kinds of revelations could easily fuel public distrust, maybe even unrest.
Definitely. And provide for the common defense. Well, that's obviously compromised by any successful foreign penetration of government or influence operations. Huge national security implications.
The general welfare seems sacrificed if public good takes a backseat to the interest of a compromised elite.
And finally, the blessings of liberty. Individual freedoms could be endangered by unchecked executive power, especially if potentially influenced by foreign actors. It really does seem like a potential assault across the board on those founding ideals if Unger's narrative is accurate.
It paints a very concerning picture of those civic aims being at risk. So, stepping back for a wisdom assessment, what's the overall value here?
Well, as a public service, the book definitely functions as a wake-up call, a stark warning about the dangers of Kompromat institutional decay.
Things we probably should be thinking about.
Right, but it also leaves some really important questions hanging, doesn't it? Questions that aren't fully resolved.
Like what specifically?
Like what direct, truly irrefutable evidence exists of Trump's recruitment as a Russian asset? That's the core claim, but the smoking gun proof remains elusive in the book.
And how much of Unger's narrative lines up with, say, official intelligence community assessments? Are there corroborating findings in things like the Miller report or Senate reports or discrepancies?
That's crucial context. And maybe a broader question, what are the actual limits of Kompromat as a tool? How effective is it really? And how can democracies realistically defend against these kinds of sophisticated, long-term influence operations?
Those are vital questions, definitely. Not just about the past, but about protecting the future.
Okay, so let's try to pull this together into a balanced conclusion. Our overall assessment of American Kompromat.
On the one hand, Unger's work is, without doubt, rigorously researched in terms of the volume of material he engages with.
Yes, the sourcing seems extensive. The narrative is detailed, it's immersive. It definitely pulls you into the complex world he's describing.
However, and this is a significant however, the core allegations, The really explosive ones rest largely on a circumstantial case.
Right. Heavy reliance on inference, on connecting those dots, and on unnamed sources, which, as we've said, requires a healthy dose of critical scrutiny from any reader.
And some connections, particularly involving Epstein, feel provocative, maybe plausible to some, but they aren't definitively proven in the text. They remain more speculative.
We should also probably acknowledge Unger's track record. As an investigative journalist, he often writes critical books about powerful figures. That context might shape how some readers perceive his objectivity here.
That's fair. Reader perception is always a factor.
But despite all those caveats, the book's enduring value, I think, lies in highlighting the very real dangers. The dangers of Kompromat, the need for transparency, for accountability.
And for robust civic defenses, especially when facing sophisticated adversaries. It forces a necessary reckoning, perhaps, with the potential for foreign subversion.
Absolutely. But the key takeaway for readers should be to approach its strongest claims with that critical scrutiny. Don't just accept it all at face value. Seek corroboration elsewhere from official investigations, from primary sources, if possible.
Good advice for engaging with any work like this, really.
Definitely. And for those of you who do want to dig deeper and explore further, we do have a few resource recommendations.
First off, consider the official reports. Things like the Mueller report, the Senate Intelligence Committee reports on Russian interference. They offer a different kind of analysis, often more formal.
Good starting point. Also, look into critical analyses and fact-checking investigations from major news organizations that have covered Trump-Russia ties. See how other journalists have approached related information.
And importantly, don't just read things that confirm Unger's view. Actively seek out counterarguments. Look for books, articles by scholars or commentators who are skeptical of the whole Russiagate narrative. Getting different perspectives is key.
Couldn't agree more. And finally, where possible, try to find primary sources. Declassified intelligence memos, perhaps. Financial disclosures from the Trump Organization were available. Going to the original source material can sometimes provide really valuable context.
Lots of avenues for further exploration there.
Indeed. So, as we wrap up our critique here, maybe leave you with this thought. If the threats to democracy really are as subtle, as pervasive as Unger suggests, what's your role? Your role in discerning truth, in upholding the integrity of our institutions?
It really comes down to critical thinking, doesn't it? That feels like our most vital defense in the end.
I think so. As we finish our analysis of this very complex book, remember those critical thinking tools we've touched on?
And for more in-depth discussions, more rational insights on a whole range of topics, keep engaging with Mindful Moments and explore our podcasts. We try to apply these same critical frameworks across the board.
Just as an addendum, this critique was developed using a systematic and precise framework designed to evaluate complex works of nonfiction, drawing on comprehensive standards for assessing argument, evidence, and implications.
Click the link on screen for the in-depth book analysis.
And please subscribe, share, purchase via the link if you're interested, and above all, think rationally.